Hey now. Hey, we're back here in Module 8, and this is when we're going to start to have some fun. So we left off on our last video with these image planes, and we got them aligned pretty good, got them centered pretty good, but we're going to start to develop now these stool legs. I actually call them a stool leg unit because there's a left and a right, and they do connect. So as we start to think about what we're going to make here, I'm going to go ahead and create a cylinder, and of course the reason being is that these legs are cylinders. But as we start to think about what we're creating, we also have to keep in mind that these are primitive objects, okay? And they come with, basically the default settings here. If we look at the input of our cylinder 1, and we can see that we have a radius, a height, subdivision axis, and subdivision height, and then subdivision cone. Well, right now we're at a radius 1, and that radius 1 is just one unit within Maya, and it is editable inside our input here. If I select the actual word radius and I middle click and drag left to right, I can adjust the size of that radius. Now it is a little sensitive, so I try to get as close as I can, and then probably would zoom in and then go ahead and change these numbers or decimal point numbers to get a little bit closer to my image plane or my reference. So I know it's about a 0.145. Okay, that's only because I've done this a few times and I remembered the decimal point. So we got the radius about the way we want it. However, we also need to think about how we're going to extend this leg out and then actually curve it. So we do need, now again, the translation X, Y, and Z and our scale X, Y, and Z with our object, we're going to look at that a little closer a little later, but those do come into effect. So the height of this, what I want to do is I want to go ahead and increase that within my input. And again, I'm just going to eyeball it and then try to type in a number which would give me this height. And I want it to have enough height to bend over and to curve so that I can connect two curves to create this unit. I'm going to increase that height a little bit more, probably right around looks like about a 7 I think may work. I'm going to bring that up, try to align the bottom here. And again, I'm just trying to get this height, just so it curves the way that I want it to. And I also have to start thinking about these, the resolution for it to bend. In other words, I need some edges going up within my height. Okay, the axis is just going to increase the smoothness of that leg. And I think from what we're utilizing, that's pretty good set at 20. And if we look at our height, we're going to start to increase these edge loops going around our sphere. I think 13 and maybe a little bit too little. Let's stick with 20 maybe. Yeah, I think 20 would probably work well for both of those two. Now that I have my resolution the way I want, I have to think about how I want this to bend. And of course I want it to bend to the right. And to do so, I'm going to use a non-linear deformer. Okay, and so here's how we do it. With the object selected, I'm going to come up here to deform, and I'm going to choose nonlinear and bend. Okay, so a bend node is created. We can see it over here in our right in our channel box. And we do have some inputs which we can utilize. They're basically to control our bend and how it will manipulate our object. Now right now it is bending, but it's kind of bending on the wrong axis. It's actually bending on its default axis. But we need it to bend in a different axis. So we can look then at our actual shape node, and we can look at our rotate and rotate the Y. In other words, we're going to rotate our object around Y 90 degrees, and we'll try again. Well, that's the bend that we're looking for. So all we had to do was rotate our nonlinear bend handle 90 degrees. And you can kind of play around with this, but I'm actually creating this enough. I kind of figured that's the quicker way to show you. Now we need to change this bound, okay? And what this does is this allows us to change where the bend is happening on our object, okay? And we have a high bound, we have a low bound. So I know in my high bound I need about a 1, okay? And what that does is that allows me to then bend it either past the default area or basically take it away. The other area that we need to look at is the low bound. Okay, we want to make sure that's set to 0 so that it doesn't have any curve. And then here's our envelope, or our curvature. I should say, I'm super sorry, it is the curvature of our actual object. Okay, so this is where the power comes in. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try to get it as close as possible and then fine tune it with our handle. Okay, and within that, I'm kind of showing you here what the envelope does too, but we're actually going to select the tool inside the viewport. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to select my object, okay, and I'm going to, oops, hold on, Control Z back. I'm going to delete the history on it, and I'm going to basically raise it up a little bit. And deleting the history, what happens is it allows me to either duplicate this particular model or place it and move it without any more deformations happening. So in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it's done. And so we created this one leg here. I fine-tuned it, and we have, let me place this in position a little bit better, and we have the bend that we want. However, it's just one side, right? We just have one side of this stool leg going, the stool leg unit, I should say. Let me go ahead and rotate it a little bit more into position and zoom in here. It's looking pretty good. Doesn't have to be exact. Again, this is just a prop in our room. But I'll pull this to the right a little bit and just kind of match up my object with my reference. Creating this leg, I mean, it's quite simple. In other words, it's a quite simple primitive to create, but now we're going to come into a little bit more advancements in mirroring and duplicating and then connecting those duplications. So what I did is I went ahead and selected my model, my object, and I hit Control D, and I created another duplicate of that other side. Well, obviously it's in the wrong rotation, so I'm going to rotate this on the x-axis, and I want to rotate it to face the other leg. So in my channel box and with my translation tools, I'm going to simply, double check to make sure everything is the same, which it is, and I'm going to look at where I'm rotating. Now I know Y is up and down, and I know I need to rotate around that. So I'm going to type in 180. I'm going to hit enter. And now you see that it is basically rotating to face my other portion. And because I placed it correctly, because I aligned it with my reference, it should look pretty close to what I want. And it does. That's pretty nice there. Now what we have to do is we have to try to combine these two objects. Okay, I'm actually going to select all the faces here on this. Be careful not to select through the mesh, because that does happen. I'm going to hold down Shift, deselect these faces, boom, 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 and I only want that disk area at the top selected, and I'm going to delete it. Okay, so now I have this open pipe. Pretty cool, huh? I'm going to do the same thing to the one that I duplicated. Okay, I'm going to select the faces a little differently. I'm going to drag select it, and I'll show you. As I do, it actually selects the faces there toward the top as well. But if I go back to that well, you'll see. If I go back to that same angle and I hold down Shift and I drag select it, well then I deselect all of those quickly and then I can delete the disk. Very nice. So, getting ready to connect these and combine these, making sure that, you know, they look pretty decent, looks alright. Now to combine meshes, guys, you have to be in object mode. You cannot be in a component mode when you're combining objects. So, of course, we're going to have to use our hotbox here. I'm just double checking to make sure I have the right count. Looks like I do. I'm going to go into object mode, and with both of these selected, I'm going to hold down Shift, select them in the outliner, and it does the same thing in the scene, where you can drag select them. That works as well. And I'm going to come up here to Mesh, and I'm going to select Combine. And I'm just going to leave it on the default settings there when I selected it. And you'll see that it gives me a combination, a new object is created. A combination of both of those are included in it, and then these little transforms of where they came from. Okay. Now to stay organized, we'll kind of just come in here and delete those. And when we did, what it did is it took away our default material because it was a transform. It utilized the material before. So I'm going to bring those back, hit Control Z. And another way around this is we can actually select what we created and we can duplicate it. Okay? And doing that usually will fix the problem. I'm going to go ahead and name them. This time it's just going to be named Front Legs Unit 01. That's fine. Okay. So again, with these selected, we could just duplicate it now and then delete everything else there in the outliner, but we'll take care of that here in a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and select this outer edge on this portion of the leg, okay, just that circle area, the last edge, and then also hold down Shift and double click again to select that circumference of that edge. Now, we have these both selected, and what I want to do is I want to bridge these two. So I'm going to come up here, I believe it is under our, I always forget where bridge is when it comes to these menus. Yeah, it's right here under Mesh Tools, and it's the third one down, and we can also get there from our modeling toolkit. We have a bridge icon there too that we can select. So either way is fine. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at the control box that comes with this particular attribute. So I'm going to select this little box here, our options come up, and we have some choices that we can take a look at. And the one I want to see is this division. Okay, and I want to increase it to about 4, I think, and then I'll go ahead and apply it. And the reason why I increased it about 4 is I want some resolution up there at the top in order to connect these legs, which we will be doing here in this upcoming next module. Now the settings here are kind of fun to play around with, and I do suggest taking your time and exploring these. We have a taper, okay, which tapers the end to a point, but it's tapering in between both beginning and end. And take that into account because, you know, taper works pretty cool for some things, but not too good for others. And then we have this twist attribute. It does something similar to the taper, but it actually twists the mesh as we're tapering. And then we have a direction source of how these new edges are going to function. And then, of course, these other offset attributes, kind of play around with them. You may like them, you may not. I'm just going to leave everything at default because it pretty much did what I wanted it to do. So in the next video, we're going to explore, finishing up these legs and connecting them. So hope you liked it so far, and I will see you in the next module as we finish up our wonderful stool legs.